Right now, somewhere in your life, you are pouring your energy into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. You have been pouring for years, and you keep wondering why it never fills up. Here's the truth nobody tells you at the start of the day. Being busy and being productive are not the same thing, and confusing the two can quietly cost you your entire life. Think about your last week. Think about how full it was. Meetings, errands, messages, deadlines. By the time you got to your pillow each night, you were exhausted, genuinely, deeply exhausted. And yet, if someone sat you down and asked, what did you actually build this week? What moved you closer to the life you say you want? How many honest answers would you have? That question is not meant to make you feel bad. It is meant to wake you up. Because the world has trained us to celebrate exhaustion as if it were achievement. We wear a packed calendar like a badge of honor. We say, I'm so busy the way people used to say, I'm doing well. But a full schedule is not the same as a full life. You can run in every direction at once and still end up exactly where you started. My name is Marcus Whitfield, and for a long time, I made this exact mistake. I mistook motion for progress. I filled my days with tasks that felt urgent and important, and I told myself that if I was tired at the end of the day, it meant I had earned something. It took me years to understand that exhaustion is not proof of purpose. Sometimes it is simply proof that you were busy watering the wrong seeds. That is what today's message is really about. Not working harder, not adding more to your plate, but learning to see clearly what actually deserves your time, your energy, and your attention. Because the truth is, your life will not be measured by how many hours you logged or how many emails you answered. It will be measured by what you actually built, who you actually helped, and the difference you actually made. And that difference is created by focus, not by busyness. If any part of what I just said feels familiar, if you've ever ended a long day wondering where all your energy went and what you actually have to show for it, I want you to write that down in the comments below. Tell me the moment you realized busy and productive were not the same thing. I read every comment, and more than that, I want you to see that you are not alone in this. Millions of people are living exhausted lives, mistaking the noise for meaning. Because here's what's coming next. The reason most people never break out of this cycle isn't a lack of effort. It's something much simpler, much more hidden, and much easier to fix than you think. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it in your own life. Let's start with the problem itself, because you cannot fix something you haven't clearly named. The problem is this. Most people spend their lives responding to whatever feels loudest, instead of pursuing what actually matters most. A ringing phone feels urgent. A new notification feels urgent. Someone else's request feels urgent. But urgency and importance are two completely different things, and almost nobody was ever taught the difference. Here's a simple way to picture it. Imagine your life as a garden, and every single day, you are planting seeds. Every task, every choice, every hour you invest is a seed going into the ground. Some of those seeds grow into trees that will feed you for decades. Deep relationships, real skills, meaningful work, your health, your character. Other seeds grow into weeds. They look green. They look like growth. But they steal the sunlight, the water, and the space that your real dreams need to survive. And here's the uncomfortable part. Most people spend the majority of their lives watering weeds without ever realizing it, because weeds often disguise themselves as responsibility. Answering every email the moment it arrives feels responsible. Attending every meeting feels responsible. Saying yes to every request feels responsible. But if none of those things are moving you toward the life you actually want, you are not being responsible. You are being distracted, and you are calling it duty. This is not a modern problem, even though modern life has made it far worse. Human beings have always struggled to separate what is loud from what is important. But today, we carry a device in our pocket that is specifically engineered to interrupt us, to fragment our attention into smaller and smaller pieces, and to convince us that everything deserves an immediate reaction. Every notification is a small request for a piece of your future. Individually, they feel harmless. A quick glance, a 30-second scroll. But add them up over a year, over 5 years, over a lifetime, and they represent years of attention that could have gone towards something that actually mattered to you. Here's the part that surprised me most when I started paying attention to my own life. The tasks that actually changed my future were almost never the ones that felt urgent in the moment. They were quiet. They didn't announce themselves. Reading for 30 minutes instead of scrolling didn't feel urgent. Having one honest conversation instead of avoiding it didn't feel urgent. Practicing a skill for half an hour when nobody was watching didn't feel urgent. But those quiet, unglamorous choices, repeated consistently, were the ones that actually built something. And here's the twist most people never expect. It's not the big, dramatic moments that shape your life. It's the small, invisible ones. The 15 minutes you spent learning instead of scrolling. The conversation you had instead of avoided. The walk you took instead of skipped. Those moments feel like nothing in the instant they happen, but they compound. And what's coming next will show you exactly how that compounding either builds your future or quietly erodes it, depending on which seeds you plant. So if urgency isn't the right filter for how you spend your time and energy, what is? The answer is simpler than most people expect, but living by it is harder than most people are prepared for. The filter is this. Does this action move me closer to the life I actually want? Or does it just fill the hours? That single question, asked honestly and repeatedly throughout your day, can completely change the direction of your life. Not because the question is complicated, but because most people never stop long enough to ask it. They move from task to task on autopilot, reacting instead of choosing. The moment you start pausing, even for 5 seconds before you say yes to something, you begin taking back control of your own life. Let's make this practical, because inspiration without action is just entertainment. Here is what intentional focus actually looks like day to day. It starts with identifying the 2 or 3 things that would genuinely move your life forward if you gave them consistent attention. Your health, a skill you want to build, a relationship you want to strengthen, work that actually matters to you. Not 15 priorities, 2 or 3. Because when everything is a priority, nothing is. Next, protect a small, specific window of time for those priorities before the rest of the world gets access to your attention. This doesn't need to be dramatic. 30 minutes in the morning before the phone comes out. 20 minutes in the evening before the television goes on. The amount of time matters less than the consistency. One person spends 30 minutes a day building a skill. Another person spends that same 30 minutes scrolling. After one day, you'd never notice the difference. After 1 year, their lives look like they belong to 2 different people entirely. Then comes the harder part. Learning to say no. Not rudely, not dramatically, but clearly. Every yes you give to something unimportant is a no. You're accidentally giving to something that matters. Saying no to a request that doesn't serve your priorities isn't selfish. It's how you protect the space for the things that actually deserve your energy. Many talented, capable people never reach their potential, not because they lack ability, but because they say yes to too many things and never go deep enough into any of them to build real mastery. Here's something else worth sitting with. You don't have to do everything yourself, and you don't have to do everything at once. Growth doesn't require perfection or grand gestures. It requires small, repeated actions in the same direction. If a goal feels overwhelming, shrink it. Write 1 page instead of a whole chapter. Make 1 phone call instead of 10. Improve by 1% today instead of demanding a complete transformation overnight. Small wins build real confidence, and real confidence builds real momentum. If any of this is landing for you, if you're starting to see where your own time has been going, do something for me. Like this video and share it with someone in your life who's been running on empty lately. Someone who needs to hear that being exhausted isn't the same as being fulfilled. Because what I'm about to tell you next is the piece almost nobody talks about. And it changes everything about how you protect your focus going forward. Here's the deeper truth hiding underneath everything we've covered so far. Your focus is not just about time management. It's about protecting the most valuable resource you will ever own, your attention. Time, in a sense, can be replaced. You can find more hours if you restructure your life. But attention, once it's fragmented, is far harder to reclaim because the world has become very good at pulling it apart. Think about how differently people approached focus a generation ago compared to now. It wasn't that people were more disciplined by nature. It's that their environment didn't fight them for every spare second of their attention. Today, entire industries are built around interrupting you, around making the unimportant feel urgent, around convincing you that if you don't check something right now, you'll miss out. That pressure is not accidental. It is designed. And most people never stop to realize that protecting their attention is not a small personal habit. It's an active defense of their entire future. This is where most people get the solution backwards. They think the answer to distraction is more discipline, gritting their teeth and trying to resist every notification through sheer willpower. But willpower is a limited resource, and relying on it all day is exhausting. The real solution isn't fighting distraction constantly. It's designing your environment so you don't have to fight it in the first place. Put the phone in another room during your focus time. Remove the apps that steal the most hours. Choose, in advance, what you will and won't allow into your attention, instead of deciding it moment by moment when your willpower is already worn thin. There's something else worth naming clearly. The people around you shape your focus more than you probably realize. If you surround yourself with people who treat busyness as a badge of honor, you will start to feel guilty for slowing down and protecting your priorities. But if you surround yourself with people who understand the value of intentional focus, people who encourage growth instead of constant urgency, your own habits start shifting without you having to force them. Your environment quietly shapes your habits, and your habits quietly shape your future. That includes the people in your life, not just the devices in your pocket. None of this requires becoming a hermit or cutting yourself off from the world. It requires becoming intentional about what gets access to your attention and what doesn't. It requires understanding that every yes has a cost, even when that cost isn't obvious in the moment. I want to pause here and say something directly to you. If this message is genuinely helping you see your own life more clearly, this is the moment to hit subscribe. Not because I need the number to go up, but because if this way of thinking resonates with you, there is a lot more I want to share with you. Practical, honest, no fluff guidance for building a life of real focus instead of constant reaction. Join me for that. And here's the part I haven't fully told you yet. The piece that ties everything together and explains why some people build extraordinary lives from ordinary days while others never seem to get anywhere, no matter how hard they work. Here is the piece that changes everything once you truly understand it. The extraordinary is built entirely out of the ordinary, repeated consistently over a long enough period of time. There is no secret shortcut. There is no hidden formula that skips the process. Every person you admire for what they've built, their skill, their health, their relationships, their success, got there through thousands of small, unremarkable choices that nobody was watching them make. This is genuinely hard to accept because we are wired to want the dramatic version of the story. We want the overnight transformation, the single decision that changes everything instantly. But that story is almost never true. The athlete who looks unstoppable trained on the mornings nobody was watching, when it would have been easier to stay in bed. The person who built a skill everyone admires practiced through the boring, plateaued middle stretch, when progress felt invisible and quitting would have been easy to justify. What looks like a sudden breakthrough to everyone else was actually built quietly, through months and years of choices most people never saw. This should be freeing, not discouraging. It means you don't need permission, talent you don't already have, or a perfect starting point. You need consistency in the direction of what actually matters to you. And consistency is available to absolutely everyone, regardless of where they're starting from. Here's the part that genuinely surprised me the most in my own life. The fear of not being ready was itself the biggest obstacle, bigger than any actual lack of ability. I spent years waiting for a moment when I would feel prepared enough, confident enough, informed enough to start focusing on what really mattered. That moment never arrived because it doesn't exist. Every person who has built something meaningful started before they felt ready. They took imperfect action instead of waiting for perfect conditions. And slowly, through that imperfect, consistent action, they became the kind of person who was ready. Not before they started, but because they started. So here's a genuine, actionable step. At the end of each day, instead of only asking yourself, was I busy? Ask yourself 3 better questions. Did I become a little better today than I was yesterday? Did my actions actually reflect what I claim my priorities are? And did I spend today's attention on something that will still matter to me a year from now? These 3 questions take less than a minute to answer honestly, but they will do more to redirect your life than almost anything else I could teach you. There's one more thing I want you to understand before we close, and it might be the most important idea in this entire video. The one that ties your daily choices to the actual shape of the life you're building, whether you're paying. Here is the single most important idea I want you to walk away with today. Your life is not being decided by your biggest moments. It is being decided quietly and constantly by your smallest ones. The 5 minutes you choose to read instead of scroll. The conversation you choose to have instead of avoid. The walk you take instead of skip. The priority you protect instead of abandon the moment something louder demands your attention. None of these choices feel significant in the moment they happen, but they are, each one, a vote for the kind of person you are becoming and the kind of life you are quietly building, one ordinary day at a time. You were not created simply to stay occupied until the years run out. You were created to grow, to contribute something real, and to leave behind something that mattered, to the people you love, to the work you care about, to your own sense of who you became. That is not measured by how full your calendar was. It is measured by how meaningful your choices actually were, especially the small, quiet ones nobody else was watching. Starting today, refuse to confuse motion with progress. You do not need to add more to your life to find more meaning in it. In many cases, you need to remove what has been quietly draining you. The distractions, the obligations that don't serve your real priorities, the belief that being busy proves your worth. Choose purpose over pressure. Choose progress over perfection. Choose focused effort over scattered effort. Years from now, nobody will remember how full your schedule was. They will remember what you built, who you showed up for, and the difference your presence made in their lives. One intentional day becomes one intentional week. One intentional week becomes one intentional month. And enough intentional months, strung together with patience and honesty, become a completely different life than the one you would have had by simply staying busy and hoping things worked out. The future does not belong to the people who move the fastest or fill their days the fullest. It belongs to the people who know, with real clarity, what actually matters to them, and who protect that day after day, even when nothing louder demands it. My name is Marcus Whitfield, and if this message reached you at the right moment, if it gave you even a little more clarity about where your time and attention have really been going, then it did exactly what I hoped it would do. I don't say this lightly. The fact that you stayed until the very end of this video tells me something about you. It tells me you're someone who's ready to stop confusing busyness with a well-lived life. And that matters more than you probably realize right now. If you want more honest, practical conversations like this one, the kind that actually help you build a more intentional life, instead of just feeling inspired for 5 minutes and forgetting it by tomorrow, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, protect your focus. It's the most valuable thing you own.